This video is meant to cover just general information about blueprints, and then specifically information about some of the more complicated blueprints in the project so far. So when creating a blueprint, generally go up to the class unless you know a specific thing that you want. And it's really mostly based around these three things. An actor is just about all we'll use. It's anything that can go in the world, like an asteroid or a bullet, any prop that you use, anything that's can be placed in the level and manipulated. A pawn is a simple character, basically, a lot of times used for enemies that don't have much to do except move around and hit you. And then characters are pawns that have some more complex interactions. They have movement components and lots of stuff I don't know off the top of my head. But you basically are the only character you need to worry about, unless you possess other characters. And even then, a lot of the templates use pawns instead of characters if they're not humanoid, because you don't need to worry about the skeleton and stuff that comes with this at a basic level. You can make a skeleton for anything, but the humanoid skeleton, the bipedal one, is the only thing that is dealt with officially with the engine. So typically always making an actor, and when you create it, it'll just show up as this ball, and any other characteristics will be brought in. Like this one has a static mesh assigned to it, so you see the object, the static mesh. So it's a really broad category having blueprints like this, and you'll see a really wide range of things in here. I've opened up a bunch of windows already. So under the data points, scene transition, here we have scene transition, and what I've done is make a data table and a structure. A data table is basically a spreadsheet of a specific type of structure. So each row in this data table is an instance of this structure. You select the one type that you want to use when you're making the data table. We probably don't need to make more of these, but we might use a lot of this. Or maybe we'll make one or a couple more types with splice information, like trajectory. If our structure had the velocity and the rotation and the position and scale and everything, those would be in fields here. And these are all text, but you could have, at the bottom you see here's a name, which is like a special type of text, and slate brush, which I think is here for the image, so it's like a texture 2D. And other than text, we'll be probably using integers and floats for the information coming out of there, for example. But if we had, like the near had a set of sounds it makes, there could be a near structure, and it could always keep track of its location, its rotation, its velocity, like a thruster sound, an image for it. If we wanted to reference it in some sort of menu, we could just pull up the near structure and grab its image. So basically this is kind of like under the hood all the information that would belong to like our character or something. In this case we're using it for scene transitions, and that screen that I pull up, this thing here, all that data is populated from these fields as well as the image and stuff. So this data table is accessed in blueprints by saying get data table row by name. And so the, which field is it? Let's see. Row. The names of these fields, of these rows here, I've got set here, and they are the name of the previous map, or the map that is coming to it. So whenever you are going to the scene transition trigger, like you walk over it, it says, what map am I on? Get the data table row associated with that name. We could switch that around so that this would point to this map's information, and then just whenever I step over the thing, advance that index by 1, because it's going to be in an array of map names. If I can find it, I'll pull up a widget that does that to make more sense. So here is a blueprint, BP_blueprint, just to help things whenever you're going through all these folders. And you'll see how that helps here too, because they may all be blueprints, but we might use something else like GI for game instance, GM for game mode. Game instance is a bad example, because probably only have one, but game modes, like my minigame project, I've got a dozen game modes already, so GM_ helps separate that kind of thing. So this blueprint contains widgets, and I'm too far away from that one, I think. So, oh, it's set to invisible. So I made this real quick today when I was making the video, and I've got one widget already that was placed in the world so that when you're in VR, this is sitting in front of you. And I created another widget as an object in this blueprint. And this one I loaded up with just a simple, maybe this is a different one. Here we go. So this is the one I made for the video, and I put this little disclaimer text here. Definitely will make a different screen. I was just doing this so I could have something to record. But there's two widgets, and this one is hidden right now. Let me show it real quick. And it should be, okay, it's the starting menu that pops up. So what I did is add these two widgets, and in the event graph when the game starts, I wait 10 seconds because the first one is showing, and then I set the first one to hidden, set visibility, and I get the second one to shown. So I just grab that widget, drag off it, start typing set visibility. If I spell it right, this will pop up. So, oh, I just saved over that, so it's going to show up in the changelog. So I would pull that out of there before I commit this. This is the spectator trigger that you've seen in the levels. I changed that for this video as well because this blue box. Actually, that's the spectator trigger. That's not the right one. So this outline of a cube is typical of a trigger. You can have a sphere or a cylinder or a box capsule trigger. And there's the other one, the regular one. So I changed the color and the width on this one so we could see it easily. But typically, pretty much always, it's only something you see outside the game. And when you get into it, if it ever starts, I have it hidden as is normally default. And that blue dot I've placed in there in place of that so that we can still know where they are. Because right now, this is a temporary thing, but that's the only way that we move from level to level is by walking over this trigger. So, okay. The way to do that is to have it hidden in game, which is default for a box, but I had it unchecked, and that's how we were seeing it whenever we play. Off topic. I got into the details of that. This is the scene transition. And then we are. So the spline rider is this little cube up here, and when we start, this cube will have this mesh, the Nero 7. And I have some other custom values here that you see. And this here is the spline, and there is a blueprint for it, but only so that we can spawn it how we want it. There's really nothing going on in it. It's just a spline component, which can be you drag off points, and it would just add more of them. So you kind of just build a line chart wherever you want, and you can do things with it. Like there's a tutorial, you like build a pipeline, and it has modular segments that just go from end to end to end. Anyway, the spline rider says thing. Okay, so it's got these public variables, instance editable, and one of them is a reference to that type of spline. And since I have that eyeball checked, that's how it shows up here. And whenever I put one of these in the world, I can set which spline that I'm interested in. And so I just click this guy with the eyedropper. I'll grab this and say that's the one I want to know. And so whenever the game starts, it knows about this now. So going back into it, Control E or Edit Blueprint, it says, hey, what spline am I following? And then it's going to follow on a timeline and be moved and rotated to follow that. So that's how it was following that path. This is like a rough simulation of what we'll do when we have the real data, because these points that I drug out into the world and moved from one to the next will not be the same as our real data, of course. And what we'll need to have is a spline with an array, and each point or each index in that array is going to be a location the spline is going to go to. So at the beginning of the game, whenever it loads up, it's going to say for each of those items in the array, drag a new spline point out. And we'll have a big non-spherical whatever, a big ellipse kind of thing that it's going to travel on as a rotation. And so the function will still be the same. It'll be out here in the map, and it might just be one point, which would be like the origin, and this guy will just point to that, and he'll follow our real data. Shouldn't have to change him at all. And we'll have one of these for Eros, one of them for whatever things we want to track. I mentioned about having like a bird's eye view, but a solar system wide, and basically what I would do there is shrink all these down to like 1,000th of their sizes or something, and clamp the trajectory that we develop by like a factor of 1,000 or something too. Whatever that factor is, just shrink everything down and then place a camera like right here, and it'll be facing down without any kind of player, but will possess that camera, meaning whenever you start it up, you'll look through the lens of the camera and it'll just show everything moving around in this little mini diorama version of it. So here we are on the test map. If I go to blueprints and the level blueprint, I mentioned it before, this is really the only easy access point that I've found to get to it. And it's like any actor blueprint, except that it's not in the world, it is the world. So we have this trigger that Eric added, and it's a reference to something in the world. So like if I wanted to take this spline rider, I click it, I go into my test map thing. If I right click while that one is highlighted over there, I can create a reference to it, just like that guy has it. And then in the level, I can affect things too. So like if at the beginning of the level, if I say right click and play, that was a custom event. I could say destroy actor, and I'll plug him in, and it'll kill him whenever the level starts, which is not good for our spacecraft. So here's a pond that I opened for some brilliant reason. This is the spectator pond that pops up in this map. I opened it up because we have our motion controller pond and our hands, whatever kind of thing those are. I think they're pawn also. But this is a whole different pawn. It's just like having another character in a game. And so instead of spawning the motion controller pawn in our world settings, I created another game mode. And basically the only thing in it is a list of the differences. Like, see, those two game modes. Yeah, spectator game mode. So there's nothing, right? It's just an empty graph. But I think if I go to class defaults, yeah, class defaults, which is on all the blueprints, you just don't really get into it very much. You set the classes, and this kind of stuff says whenever you're using this game mode, if you don't know what to spawn a spectator pawn. So our other one was spawning a here we go, a VR character or a motion controller pawn or whatever. But this game mode, whenever we have it set up, we'll set all those defaults. And so I just say select that game mode, and it knows what to do with the rest of it. And if I want to select that game mode but still override some of its things, this may actually change them altogether. But I can set custom stuff here. So I start with the spectator pawn, and I do that so that I can have a different set of controls, because I wanted this to feel like a free-floating camera that you move around, which is kind of what you have when you're in the editor but not playing. So our motion is free form. There's no gravity. There's no jumping. You just have WASD to move, and the axis move up and down. I think I've got that on the W and E or Q and E. And then these I added. The F key is flipping between a camera in the level that I save into the game instance and our other camera. So I flip-flop. If I press F, it goes to one. If I press F, it goes to the one that I don't have. So it's kind of you can go into these definitions, and it's just like a flip branch So it's kind of like a brain twister to think about what's going on here. But basically, it's like, are you the thing? If you are, then go to the other thing. If you're not, then go to the other thing. I don't know. I can't say it. But you can kind of get the point of having multiple pawns. You just have different functionality. So if we had a different kind of setup for our astronaut guy, like we wanted them to do certain things on certain levels, if it's different enough, we might set up different pawns for that. Here's that left and right thing. I had two ways of switching between cameras. And sprint. So the left shift is like multiplying our dude moving around because we're in space and there's huge distance between things. So, I'm not using that one. I'm going to shut up about all these specific things and these data points and the transition scene I'm going to leave for their own video because of the because they're pretty complex and we'll want to use them when we're making each level, so it might be worth separating from this. That's it.